In part 1 and 2 of this series, I navigated through the mists from Taynuilt to Lochtarbert and Jura, where I set up camp for a couple of nights, then circumnavigated the lovely islands of Ormsay and Colonsay before returning to Lochtarbert. Now it was time to move on again. And this time, because the tides were an hour later, I got to sleep in until 6 a.m. I still had to get up before the boat dried out in the following tide, but I also wanted to use the tide to assist carry me down the Sound of Eilean, which flows almost like a river. It was another splendid morning, and the sea was like a mill pond as I dismantled camp and loaded up the boat. Although I was sad to leave Lochtarbert, I was happy as a sandboy as I made my way across the bay towards the Sound of Eilean. It was now 7:30 a.m, so I knew I had another 2 hours of ebbing tide to assist me through the Sound. I was going to be very flexible with my route as I was waiting to see the sea conditions when I reached the Sound of Jura. But I did want to conserve as much fuel as possible in case I decided to do a round of Gigha and Cara, assuming conditions were suitable. This part of the coastline of Jura is very different from the rugged northwest coastline. Huge dikes of hard basalt rock extend across the beaches before disappearing into the sea. I kept a careful eye on the depth sounders, but they didn't appear to extend very far under the water. I slowly eased my way into this beautiful little bay to admire a lovely tumbling waterfall, before heading south down the silent Sound of Eilean. And it was such an idyllic day for this perfect journey. As it was still very calm when I reached the Sound of Jura, I decided to go round the islands of Gigha and Cara, which were almost invisible to the naked eye, 15 miles across the open sea. I was around 2/3 the way across when I confessed to getting a bit of a fright. A huge black mound of blubber broke surface only 50 metres from the boat. It was a minke whale taking a breath of fresh air. It's the closest I ever been to a live one, and it was a wonderful but very worrying sight. The sighting only lasted a second or two, so I had no chance of grabbing a camera. The only proof I have is the flat ring in the sea where it had been. I did stop for a few moments, but was a little bit concerned it could resurface even nearer the boat, so I decided not to hang around in case it upset my day. So I continued on my way, delighted with the sight that I saw. I did keep looking back, and possibly 10 minutes later it did reappear, many miles away. Soon the low-lying islands of Gigha and Cara were firmly in my sights. These islands bring back a lot of memories to me. A divorce left me with no money, and the only boat I had was a small Seagus flat floor, powered by a 2.5 horsepower outboard. It was the start of my multi-day boating adventures. I went round these islands with my brother and his friend, who were in their kayaks. I slept in my Tesco extra value tent, which lasted many adventures. The only issue with it was that it was only 5.5 feet wide, while I'm 6 feet tall, so I had to sleep like a coiled up spring or with my feet hanging outside the door, getting eaten by midges. Cara is the southernmost of the islands, and I will never forget rounding the Mull of Cara on my wee slat floor. A tide race was running, and I was very nervous of it, but thoroughly enjoyed the experience. I've come a long way since those days, and although the race wasn't running, my memories certainly were. Even the young goats added atmosphere to my memories, as they would have been descendants of this old goat from that long ago day. It was now mid-morning break time, so I headed through the outer reefs to land in a lovely sandy bay, where I soon had the coffee brewing. It was very pleasant sitting in the warm sun, slurping coffee and scoffing sandwiches while admiring the stunning views. But time and tide wait for no man nor beast, so I headed on my way towards Gigha, passing through crystal clear waters as I went. Soon the island of Cara was just another memory, as I passed by Eilean Island, heading for the island of Gigha. And when I got there, I just had to land on another lovely sandy bay, just to say that I had been there. And then I went on my way again, across the beautiful pea-green sea. Round the most northerly tip of Gigha to visit possibly the prettiest of the sandy beaches in the island, but when I got there and saw it was quite busy with swimmers and sups, I decided I'd seen enough, so turned around again and made my way across to the mainland. The distant hills of Jura were barely a blue haze across a sea made of glass. There were a couple of lovely sandy beaches on the mainland near Colberry, and not a soul to be seen. There was, of course, also the very busy campsite at Port Ban. Crossing the entrance to Loch Collisport, I knew I was nearing my destination for the day. My plan was to camp overnight on the MacCormaig Islands, off the mouth of Loch Sween. In fact, not just any old MacCormaig Island, but Eilean Mor, which St Cormac used for his personal retreat around the 7th century. There's a natural harbour in the island's northern end, and the yacht was already at anchor for the night, but the owners didn't come ashore, so I had the island to myself. I tied up at the jetty, knowing that I could sleep late in the morning and know that the boat would still be afloat even at low tide. Then I took a look in Billy's house, which is a private bothy. The front is open to the public and holds information on the island, but the bothy part is kept locked. They asked for a donation for the upkeep of the island, so I left a little money in the box as I was using our jetty for the night. I then looked for a flat spot to pitch a tent, and that proved almost impossible to find. As such, I do not recommend camping here now that I've tried it. There is a flat area just outside the bothy, but I didn't like using it in case another boat arrived later on. And even that flat area was on a bit of a slope, and I was worried I would roll into the harbour during the night. I also kept well clear of the northwestern end, as it was covered in seagulls who took great delight in telling me I was not welcome there. So I sat in my boat and enjoyed a couple of tins of gravy, well away from the flying rats. Then I sat outside wee Billy's house and enjoyed another couple of tins. Then went back to the tent to polish off the last 2 tins, which put me in the mood to see the rest of the island. On my way to St. Cormaig's Chapel, I almost damaged my foot when I fell into a rabbit hole. Then bashed my head in the lintel the first time I went through the low door. I can only assume St. Cormaig was only 5 foot tall. Then I almost fell off my perch paying my own tribute to him. I had no accidents entering the original ruined chapel built outside the cave he used for prayer and meditation purposes. However, there was no way in God's earth that the St. Cormaig was going to lure me into his rabbit hole, because I knew it would be a one-way ticket for me when I found I couldn't get back out again. Feeling a little battered and bruised, I made my way back to the tent, wondering what I'd done to upset the saintly man. Was it my drinking habit he disapproved of, or the fact I only left £1 in his tin in Billy's house? Whatever it was, he was not going to let me off yet. A plague of locusts which looked like flying ants descended in my tent, and then a flock of flying rats squawked all night giving me little peace for sleep. Yep, I certainly can't recommend St. Cormaig Island for camping on. However, I did survive the experience, and I'm sure I'm a better man for it. I hope you enjoyed the video and will return for part 4. Thanks for watching.